Welcome to an episode of the Carpool Critics. My name is Nicholas.
My name is Jessica.
And I'm Ryan.
And we just got out of seeing Spiderman Far From Home. Man, what a roller coaster. But Ryan, well, tell us a little bit what the movie was about.
Well, so this is actually my second time seeing it. I saw it opening night, and this is now the second night, and this was Nick and Jessica's first time seeing it, so I have a little bit of an advantage on them. So the movie's set 9 months after the events of Avengers Endgame, and everyone in this world is basically just trying to chill out. Everything's been very drama, and now it's all over. We're moving on to a new story. So part of this is Peter and his class are going on a trip to Europe, and Peter is just very excited that he gets to do a normal kid thing. He gets to go to Europe. Well, I guess that's not really such a very privileged movie teen thing. He's going to go to Europe, and he's going to create this really over-elaborate, awkward kid plan to confess his love to MJ, the girl he has a crush on, and who he thinks also has a crush on him, but he doesn't quite know because it's all very awkward, as you do with teen movies. That's kind of the main overarching plot, but of course this is a Marvel movie, so it needs to be actiony and explosion-y. So while this is going on, we find out that there are these cosmic elemental beasts that are going to pop up and try to destroy the world, and there's this new hero that sort of comes out of nowhere, actually from another dimension, so we're starting to get into this whole Marvel multiverse thing. So then, who's this hero going to be? How is he going to fit into this story? He's kind of cool. He's played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who I think actually does a really good job of this, but we can get more into that later. So yeah, that's basically the movie.
It's a good setup for what we're going to be talking about. We just want to make sure that was a little spoil-free for you. For me personally, if you like Spider-Man or any Marvel movie, you got to see it. What about you, Ryan?
Definitely. This is maybe my favorite Spider-Man of all three recent incarnations of the Spider-Man universe.
I'm definitely in agreement with you guys. I'm still buzzing.
I know there's a lot to digest.
There is a lot to digest, and
we're going to try to hit on every single point of it the most we can on
I'm having a hard time trying not to say anything too spoilery right now.
So we might be driving around a little bit longer, so just enjoy the ride. But yeah, again, if you haven't seen it yet and you want to, you can just stop listening right now and then get to listening afterwards. But right now we're just going to get into spoilers and talking more in depth of the movie. And if we can just, wrap our minds around what just happened. But
it's a trip.
Very much so a trip. Going into what you said, Ryan, about the characters, I don't know about you guys, but I thought they did a really good job on portraying, like you said, the absence of the 5 years after the snap or the blip, as they called it in the movie.
Well, it has a cold open that's more about the overarching story, but the actual movie itself starts in this really just awful, cheesy video tribute to all of the heroes who died over the course of Infinity Wars and Endgame, and then you find out that it is this, high school morning news TV show.
Well, I liked how they kind of went into it. I mean, because we all went to the same high school.
Oh man, that same little bad.
Right. So
it just reminded me of the school updates, having to watch it on TV with the really bad news crew.
Right.
Going back to the characters, like Tom Holland, I thought did a very good job. Like I thought he did a really good job in Homecoming, but he really stepped it up this time around with balancing the emotions of losing Tony Stark, but also wanting to still be a kid in high school, especially on a big school trip like this one. Really, actually, I had no impressions of Zendaya, or is it
Zendaya?
Zendaya,
yeah. But because she was kind of in the backgrounds in the last movie of Homecoming, and she brought it more of her awkwardness and and we're all teenagers at some point, and they touched on all the cringiness of being a teenager in this movie, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of balancing the awkwardness where the characters are just kind of unrealistically suave and they know exactly the right thing to say at the right time, like
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, Andrew Garfield, or Social Network, to go to a different genre.
Right,
is a movie that has great writing, but it's not written like a human. It's written by a writer, or it's written as like a writer speaking. But then there's other movies where it goes the other way, where the characters are just over-the-top awkward, where it's just painful to watch, and you're thinking, just say the thing.
Yeah.
Say that you love them, and everything will be okay. And they just don't, and it's contrived. I think they hit, just the perfect middle ground of being sort of endearingly awkward, but not so awkward that it is painful to watch or that it stupidly, affects the plot in ways that it doesn't deserve to.
Yeah, I definitely feel like they continue that on from the first film of the Homecoming, because Peter Parker was that awkward teenager then when he was trying to figure out what kind of superhero he was going to be, and then now he has to figure out again what kind of superhero he's going to be without his mentor Tony Stark, which you can definitely see how difficult it was for him to not have Tony Stark, and he wanted that role model again of having that hero to look up to, or somebody that he can actually take the reins and he can just kind of follow instead of him being the leader or taking charge, because he realizes he's just a 16-year-old boy. He doesn't have all the answers, and he is too young to have all the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I think Nick Fury does, or Samuel L. Jackson does a good job of kind of being that jerk.
Not understanding what's
of
going
not
on.
understanding.
Of being Nick Fury is just like, he's not going to make you nice, he's not going to make you feel good, he's just going to tell you, if he thinks you suck, he's going to say, Spider-Man, you suck. Go home and come back when you're ready to step up.
Well, this is the first time I think that he's actually said, bitch, please, in the MCU.
Oh, but that's got to be one of my favorite moments of the movie.
I agree, but actually it's a good contrast to the opposite side of it, and Jake Gyllenhaal's portrayal of Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. I thought he did a really good job of playing the mentor part of it. Mm-hmm. And then, not really spoilers if you actually follow Spider-Man, but he actually isn't all who that he seems to be. And when he turned on that switch of being who he is and playing and manipulating people,
when he reveals that he's actually the villain of the story.
Exactly. I thought he brought it. I'm not really a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan, but
he's really good at playing very kind of creepy characters.
Yes. Agreed. Definitely agree.
And I think in this he's very good at, like you said, portraying this very kind, tender, understanding, like a father figure to Peter that he's never really had from anyone else in the series, not even really from Tony Stark in the previous movies. Because Tony Stark obviously cares about him, but he's
more selfish.
He's very selfish, he's manipulative, he's snarky. I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal is also snarky, but he's
more of a good older brother, kind of a mentor.
Exactly. And he portrays that so well, and then when he flips the switch, like Nick was saying, just that creepiness, that creepy smile, and the laugh, and the look in his eye changes, and he just pulls that off so well.
Yeah, that was such a quick change, too, because because the movie deals a lot with holograms, and to have that, you see it in the bar when they're in, Prague?
Right.
And the hologram starts to fade away, but he still has that I'm the good guy look. But then as soon as the hologram is almost completely gone, then that's when his face changes and his own personal hologram is also disappearing at the same time the hologram in the bar is disappearing, which I thought was very interesting.
Right. And again, in that scene at the bar when Peter is trying to force the glasses onto him, but he's saying, no, this is not meant for me. And let's rewind a bit. The reason why the glasses are so important is because it is tied to every Stark Industry satellite and item out there that could be used for good or for evil or for anybody's whim. And Mysterio wants to have that tech just because that helps with his show.
Right. These are the glasses that Nick Fury gives to Peter as a last gift from Tony Stark. It's called Edith, but it's basically the equivalent of Jarvis that Peter talks to.
I love the acronym.
Even dead, I'm the hero.
I knew it was going to happen just because of I like Spider-Man and all the comics and everything and the shows, but just to see how much it looked genuine to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know all of the Spider-Man mythos besides whatever I've already seen in the movies that have come before, so I didn't really know anything about Mysterio. But if anything, I just knew that somehow Mysterio ended up becoming the antagonist in some way just because he was so nice. There has to be another shoe to drop at some point. But I got swept away, and when the scene where Peter Parker is like, oh no, you need to be the person, you need to be Iron Man. Finally, they have this conversation. But so when Peter Parker is pushing the glasses on to Mysterio, and he's saying, no, I totally bought it, and then when he took them, I was happy that he took them.
Right.
And then you get slapped in the face like 10 seconds later, and I don't always get surprised by movies when they do twists like that, and even though I was expecting it, that still surprised me a little bit, just the way they executed that.
Right.
Well, it goes into what he says towards the end of the movie when he is that villain now. And he doesn't really want to be a villain in his own twisted mind. He wants to be the next Avenger by
faking his way.
By faking his way and creating a disaster by also killing hundreds of people.
Well, a false flag.
Yeah, and he wants to be. It's a savior complex?
Yeah.
Where you create the disaster in order to come in and save the day. The thing that I loved is that, because yes, Mysterio is trying to portray being the good guy, and he has this idea of how he's going to have the savior complex and come in and save the day. People want to believe what they want to believe, and that's what he keeps saying throughout the whole film. And it is true in today's society, where you have people are seeing things, and they're seeing things through social media, and they're seeing things with what they're reading or what's being told on the news, and people just want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't really dive deeper into it. And it kind of goes low-key with what they were doing with the social media earlier, because Peter Parker doesn't want to come out as Spider-Man in Europe, so he has this new costume where you don't see that it's him.
Even though it's very obvious.
Even though it's obvious that it's him, but his friend Ned ends up saying, oh no, this is a look-alike, this is like, what is it, Monkey Man? Or
the Night Monkey.
The Night Monkey. And now that's, like, throughout Europe, everybody knows that whenever they see him, he's the Night Monkey. So it just kind of shows that the littlest things, it just kind of goes and spreads like wildfire. It's like, you don't dive deeper, you don't actually look and see. Like MJ did go and dive deeper in order to figure out that.
And she's the one who sees through the illusions.
Right.
Yeah.
Both for Peter Parker and for
Mysterio.
That's a good, I didn't notice that actually.
Yeah,
That's a good motif.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, but let's kind of push forward, because that's a really good point that I really want to touch on later.
We could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, pretty much. But I want to get to the big climax of the film where they're all in London, and it's a great thing because we've actually all been to London, especially Tower Bridge, not London Bridge.
That was funny.
as they very subtly pointed out that they were aware of that common misconception among American tourists in London.
Exactly. But I thought visually it was stunning on what they did, especially with all the drones phasing in and out and putting in the fake elemental attacking London, and the team of people working around the clock to help Mysterio put on his big ruse, and the fighting, or even in Berlin too, when they had that fight between Mysterio and Spider-Man, where I don't know, I was real tempted to turn to Jessica and say that we got to see this movie in 3D, just because of that scene.
Oh, I already told Ryan that I'm very tempted to see this movie in 3D.
And I said seeing this in 3D would be very meta.
Probably. I don't know about you guys, but what did you guys think of that final cut scene?
Of the Battle of London?
Oh, yeah, of the Battle of London.
So one thing Jessica pointed out instantly, and this is actually kind of from the B-side story of the battle, because the main battle is Mysterio is using these drones to create this ultimate combined elemental, like, Voltron type that's going to destroy the Earth, except he's going to stop it, but it's all an illusion and it's not real. Meanwhile, Happy and Peter's friends are having to hide from these drones because Mysterio knows that Peter's friends know who Mysterio really is, that he's this villain, he's doing this, so he needs to kill them. And so he sends a couple drones after them, and they're hiding out in the Tower of London. And so Jessica noticed right away, and I noticed it right away the first time I saw it, is that where they go to hide is in the White Tower, the main tower of the Tower of London. But what they say they're doing is they're going to go hide with the Crown Jewels, which are in a completely different building, but...
It's all still in the Tower of London, so technically they're in the right vicinity, but they are not in where the Crown Jewels are.
Right, but obviously for the ambiance and...
I feel like for security reasons, too, they can't actually shoot where the Crown Jewels are.
Probably.
One thing I liked, too, is the fact that they had the Beefeaters shooting, because...
But technically they weren't beefeaters.
No, they were soldiers, but...
They were the royal soldiers.
The royal soldiers, but the thing is, the royal soldiers, beefeaters, they all are military people. They are active members in the military, so it would make sense that they would fire and protect.
Yes, and not just active military. These are like the best special forces.
Yes,
proven.
beefeaters are the best of the best.
Right. So when they have these military assault rifles and they're shooting at the drones, I noticed a couple of people in the theater were laughing, like, "Oh, this is a funny thing." But since we've all been there, we all know. No, these are highly trained soldiers who can and will kick ass if they need to defend the complex.
Yes.
Agreed.
Visually, one thing that I really enjoyed from the final battle scene, when Peter Parker is at the Tower Bridge and he's trying to get to Mysterio and he has to fight all those drones, and he's just shooting his webs and going after them and does all the fight sequences and uses one as a battering ram to get the other ones. But just the way that because he's all into physics and how things work, he knows how to mathematically get the angles to work in his favor to destroy them. Or even when he creates it looked like a Thor's hammer, and then he had and then he uses the Tower Bridge sign as like a Captain Shield.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, I think in all of the Spider-Man movies, Peter Parker is a genius. Like that's kind of his character trait. But it seems like in a lot of them, that's all they can make of it is like, oh, he's a genius, so he just has this kind of genius pin on him. Whereas I think with Tom Holland, they do a good job of portraying him in a way that actually shows how clever he is, like in the little things he does.
Right.
Well, that was cool too when he's on his way to London because he realizes about Mysterio, and he goes to London in order to save his friends and destroy, air quotes, Mysterio. He builds his own suit with Stark technology, and that scene where Happy is looking at him and just watching him,
and he's happy.
He is happy, but he's seeing his friend Tony Stark, because that's exactly what he did in the previous films. So one of the guys that is helping Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, so he's the guy who helps with the drones. He was actually in the first Iron Man film.
That was a cool Easter egg.
That was a cool Easter egg, because I actually looked it up, because they show a clip of him in it, but I wasn't sure if that was they just added that in.
Yeah.
But he actually was in the first Iron Man.
Yeah, as soon as they showed that clip, I wouldn't have remembered that if they hadn't shown it, but as soon as they showed it, I was like, oh yeah, I recognize this. That's crazy how they can pull these things. I mean, obviously they didn't have that planned when they made the first Iron Man movie, but I think it's really cool that they took the effort to actually go back and kind of create dots to connect these earlier movies.
I agree, and it's actually a testament to even going back to Endgame, where I've actually gone back and watched all of the movies that are tied into Endgame. Endgame did a really good job of just the minor details that are in that movie, and so that makes Endgame a lot better movie to me. And I'm glad they did that with Spider-Man Far From Home.
Well, one thing I told Ryan, and I do need to see it again to double check that I am right, but there's a scene when they're in Venice right before the water monster comes. Peter Parker and MJ meet and they start to walk towards the water. I mean, in Venice, everything's water.
They're walking along the canal.
Yeah. So they walk by, and it was right before the Venetian guy hands them a rose. And there's a guy that's behind him, and he walks past him, but he turns around and he looks at him.
Mm-hmm. Right, and
I have to double check, because I told Ryan about it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's one of it was the bus driver, that's the British bus driver at the end.
Well, given the attention to detail, I would not be surprised at all if that's true, but I didn't notice that myself.
Just going back to the battle scene, and we can go on about it, which we definitely will. But what did you guys think of how they ended the fight scene with Mysterio sadly passing at the end?
I was fine with it. I think one thing that is a criticism I have of some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies is that they don't really give a lot of the villains their dues. I think I could say this most about the original Avengers movie with Loki, where I think Loki in that movie had the potential to be a very deep, powerful character, a deep, powerful villain with very interesting motivations, but instead they just turned him into the butt of a Hulk smash joke.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that even if it was mostly just for like just a few seconds when he does his villain reveal at the halfway point in the movie, and later when he's dying, you do, I think, get a real sense of how he sees the world and how he is the hero of his own story, and I appreciate that they gave him that moment.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Well, then it also goes back to that character that I was talking about, who was in Iron Man, where I was questioning, because Ryan, you said that the first time you saw it, you questioned how Spider-Man or Peter Parker said execute.
Oh, yes.
So when they're turning off the drones, they said, do you want to confirm? It's like confirm execution or something like that.
Do you want to execute all cancellations? And
he says, yes, I want to execute. And you said that was a very interesting way to see it. I didn't actually, I probably subconsciously, I was like, well, that's weird. But the thing that caught my eye was the fact that the guy who was in Iron Man, I think his name was William.
The guy in charge of controlling drones?
Yes, he took something, and I was curious to know what he took.
Yes.
Because, yes, Mysterio is dead, but what...
His operation isn't dead?
Yes, because I was wondering what he was going to do with the stick.
Right, and I don't mean to keep on pushing things off, but just to wrap it up, especially with the ending being as it is, what did you guys think of the reveal of Spider-Man to MJ finally?
Well, she figured it out, so it's not like he revealed it.
Mm-hmm. I did like that MJ figured it out. I think this whole, my loved ones can never know my secret because it will endanger them, is not necessarily a bad trope because it's understandable as a motivation, but at the same time, it has gotten kind of milked for drama in a way that's become very boring because it's been done so much. So I think it's more interesting to tell a new story where that isn't the case and where the loved ones figure it out or are told. But I think specifically the fact that MJ figured it out is just an interesting twist. It makes her a more interesting character with her own power and isn't just sort of an object to be attached to Peter as a story device.
Exactly, and then she can go to bat to him, like in that scene in London when they get off the train. She kind of twisted on the guy who has been crushing on her the whole movie.
Right. Oh, that was a great scene.
But now she has a reason to do that instead of just kind of making up a false narrative, which oddly enough is a theme throughout the whole movie, like Jessica brought up.
They are, I think, trying to make Peter Parker's story sort of into an echo of Tony Stark's story, or they're grooming him to become like kind of this new Tony Stark genius inventor, like Tony Stark, but more reliable, more ethical, more good. Like they say, he wants to be like him, but better.
Right.
And I think there's also the echo of one of the most interesting things of the original Iron Man movie was that he just comes out and says, I'm Iron Man at the end. And so in a way this has that same sort of thing, except it's not intentional.
What do you think of, Jessica, what do you think of the relationship and the chemistry of Zendaya and Tom Holland in the movie?
Well, Zendaya and Tom Holland had a great relationship, and they are actually really good friends off screen to the point where people are thinking that they're dating, which they're very adamant that they're not. But you can definitely tell that they have a good friendship and a good chemistry on screen. But I highly enjoyed their awkward cuteness together because MJ is very awkward and doesn't know exactly how she's supposed to express things, so she kind of does doom and gloom. And then he's a science nerd, so he just kind of is awkward in general. So just to see them try to talk to each other was very funny, and they had these moments. You can definitely see that they liked each other, but they didn't know how to say it.
And how about the end after he defeated Mysterio?
When they're on the bridge?
Yeah.
Because it shows that she actually knows who he is, wants to make sure that he's okay, but then at the same time, she brought a weapon just in case he needed help. So she's not one to go hide. She would be a person of action, which is good for him, because then that way he knows that she can at least try to protect herself. But then even when they go back to New York and he takes her flying and she's like, or web shooting.
Yeah, that was a really,
and she's like,
great. Yeah.
She's like, no. And it is going to be very interesting to see how it continues on in the next film, because now she knows and Ned knows, and Aunt May, but it's going to be interesting to see how they do it, and now the world knows.
Yeah, which actually kind of leads into what I was actually going to bring up next, which was throughout the moment when Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, figures out that Peter Parker knows about his his evil plan, he keeps on saying he's going to kill him. He's going to kill him, he's going to kill him, he's going to kill him. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, I thought that was a really well done. That's just like you were saying with any movie, villains have to kill the superhero and everything. But when they reveal that they edited the last scene right before Mysterio actually dies, and he kills his reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Mysterio kills Peter Parker's reputation.
Exactly.
Or Mysterio's henchman, because presumably Mysterio is dead, so it was his henchman that kind of took this doctored footage of
which was
his
on the
death.
USB drive, which is what I was trying to figure
Exactly.
out. Yeah.
So to create this fake video of Peter Parker, not just Spider-Man, but Peter Parker as Spider-Man, is actually the one who was behind this whole thing and killed Mysterio to try... that Mysterio is trying to stop Peter Parker from taking over the world, and Peter Parker killed Mysterio.
Because of it, yeah.
But
that goes genius, I thought. Very genius to put that in. I'm sorry, Jessica.
But that goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier, which is people want to believe what they want to believe. And it's true with, like I said, it's true with social media. And Jake Gyllenhaal knew this, or Mysterio knew this, and he was thinking, okay, I might die in this, so this is probably what's going to happen. Or he was hoping that he wouldn't die in this. But either way, he was going to kill Peter Parker's reputation, who is known for being a nice guy, one that has the moral compass. But at the same time, in a sense, they did it to us as the viewer, mm-hmm. because we want to believe what we want to believe, and we were believing that he was physically going to kill him, not kill his reputation.
Well, I think Mysterio would have preferred to literally kill him.
Yes.
And still be the hero and alive.
Yes.
Quote unquote, we'll see.
That was what he was believing to believe.
Yeah, one thing I noticed watching this the second time around is that there is a moment where Mysterio says, load my hologram suit, and then they cut away from him, and then they cut back to him, and he is not wearing the hologram suit. So I wonder if that was when he was playing this video, if he had that idea.
Oh, that's a good point.
Where he was doing the kind of voice into the camera. Although I guess it's also possible that it was just the henchman who did the whole thing, since they have this amazing hologram technology. There's not really, it's all deep fakes. No one can know whether, a person was actually there or not to begin with.
That I thought was amazing on how they did the whole hologram part. I do realize that we are jumping around a lot, but where
Peter Parker is trapped in the holograms and doesn't know where he is.
Yeah, in Berlin, he's trying to figure out how he's going to tell Nick Fury that he screwed up, and then he finds out that this whole thing is just a lie, and he ends up getting hit by a train. And then again, he's trying to get his Peter tingles to work.
Oh gosh, that was.
Just say Spidey sense.
I know Spidey sense is kind of a funny thing that's easy to make fun of, but yeah, that was...
The Peter Tingle?
It was a good joke. I don't know if they need to keep calling it the Peter Tingle for the rest of time.
I'm going to be calling it the Spidey sense, because that is exactly what it is, but
I support that.
Peter Parker has the Spidey sense, and for some reason he really wasn't getting the Spidey sense in the film. There were some parts where you can see that he was kind of having it, but for the most part he really wasn't having that Spidey sense. And again, it really goes back to people want to believe what they want to believe. So here he is. He's now at the end on the bridge. He has to fight Mysterio, and Mysterio puts on the hologram, puts the invisibility cloak on the drones, and he goes, if you want these glasses, then you have to come and get them. So what Spider-Man does is he closes his eyes and just trusts himself. And trusts his own feelings. Yeah.
Uses the tingle.
He uses his Spidey sense in order to figure out where the danger is and not choosing to believe what is in front of him.
Because if he closes his eyes, he can't see the holograms, and the holograms can't have any control of him.
Exactly. So he's just trusting himself.
And as much as, people don't like or like having like messages or an underlying meaning in movies nowadays. I've actually enjoyed, like, my favorite movies to watch are the Captain America movies, Winter Soldier and Civil War, because basically the underlying meaning of that is, and this is actually in Winter Soldier, it was before like Snowden thing, or even maybe a little after.
I think it was a little after that.
About like spying and
exactly the idea that
surveillance,
because I just rewatched that movie recently, and it definitely taps into and something that was big then and something that should still be a big concern now, which is kind of this idea that, oh, wait, maybe having this giant, all-powerful government overseeing operation that, you know, makes sure everyone is good according to whatever their definition of good is, you know, maybe that's not the best idea, depending on who's running the operation.
Exactly. Or even in Civil War, when it's all about civil liberties. And should you give up your civil liberties for a quote-unquote greater good, when you don't really understand the full meaning of what this good might lead into? Because in the end, the old saying is, the road to hell is led with good intentions.
Is paved with good intentions.
Yep, exactly. And then also, and I didn't think of it at all, we actually saw the movie with my friend Kelly and his girlfriend Michelle, and Michelle brought up this interesting point, and it blew my mind when she said it, because I didn't want to believe it. But she said Mysterio is somebody that was more selfish and took a left turn, which is the complete opposite of Iron Man. All he had was his brains and technology, which is pretty much what Mysterio had and Tony Stark had. And it's amazing to think like what Tony Stark would have become if he just decided, you know what, screw it, I just want to have all the pomp and circumstance without having to do the actual dirty work of it.
Yeah, and as I'm thinking about that, that also actually fits in really well with Spider-Man Homecoming, and with, who was the villain in that one?
Vulture.
Vulture, right. Where, again, you have this sort of working person who wasn't born with all of the privileges that Tony Stark had and with all these resources, and someone who can just do whatever they want, get drunk, crash parties, and just kind of be a jerk like Tony often is, and still be the hero. They have to deal with consequences because they're normal humans. And things that the heroes do, while being well-intentioned, can still create these shockwaves that cause unfortunate circumstances. And I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie is definitely the bad guy. Vulture in Homecoming was definitely the bad guy. But I think it's interesting how they're sort of exploring how even good guys can unintentionally create bad guys out of guys who weren't bad guys to begin with.
Right, because the only background portion that they actually do state with Mysterio is the fact that he worked with Tony Stark, or for Stark Industries, and he created the hologram that is stated, I believe, in
Civil War.
It's Civil War. And Tony Stark calls it barf. For somebody who, like Mysterio, he puts his life and soul into this work and creation of a hologram, and to have it be used as a toy for Tony Stark and to have it renamed as the acronym BARF, and then eventually to be fired. I definitely agree with what you're saying, Ryan, because here's Tony Stark, who is this hero. He has these ideas in his head in order to create good, but then he eventually unintentionally turns this guy bad.
Right. I think this is a much more clever and much more subtle way of kind of trying to do the same thing that I think they were trying to do, that the writers of the MCU were trying to do kind of a little bit more ham-fistedly with Avengers 2 and Civil War, where they were kind of going very over the top and trying to create this sort of, you know, false dichotomy of like, oh, you know, either we can have heroes, but then they'll destroy things, or we can just not have heroes.
Right.
And I think there was a lot of potential there, and I think this kind of plays with the same ideas, but in a more clever way. And it shows that those are clever ideas, but I think this does a better job of playing with those ideas than a lot of the previous MCU movies.
Well, this one I definitely feel like I enjoyed this one a lot more than Endgame.
Really?
Yeah. And I really didn't want to, which is a funny thing.
I mean, I definitely enjoyed this one. I also enjoyed Endgame a lot.
I enjoyed Endgame a lot, too. I really did. You could definitely see where they try to get everybody together to make it all work and to finish off specific storylines. You can see that. This one is a building of a story. This is taking what they did there and building off of it. And they had these moments of highs and they had these moments of lows, and like the way that it goes all the way through the credits, you have all of these feelings going on. How am I supposed to walk out of this movie theater right now? And then they leave you with that lovely little clip at the end. And I like when they do those lighthearted clips at the end, because then you get a little bit lighter and you can walk out of the theater and not feel like you're in a haze.
Right. Well, and actually, to move on to this next thing, I think we can all agree that we're so glad that the writers of Disney are actually involved with this, especially with what Sony has kind of put out there with previous ones. But not to say that all Sony ones are bad. There's only been one that I've actually truly enjoyed over the last ones, which is actually Into the Spider-Verse, which was oddly enough kind of brought into this one when they were talking about split universes and everything. And
I actually wasn't thinking about Into the Spider-Verse when I said this was my favorite. That's a tough one.
I know.
They're very different movies.
And then another thing that was interesting is they did something that I wasn't expecting, but I was so happy that they did, was when they finally revealed who J.J. Jameson was going to play for the Daily Bugle.
Yes!
He wasn't there, and I'm like, there's only one man that could play this role.
He transcends all incarnations of Spider-Man.
Yes!
J.K. Simmons is back as the man himself who hates
Spider-Man!
I also, again, like, I love this little touch, and this is in the mid-credit sequence, so it's just very short. But again, tying into this whole sort of, like, what can you trust? Who defines reality? This fake news time is that instead of being the head of a major, New York paper, he's now this sort of alt-right, sort of Alex Jones type online news guy. At least that seems how they're kind of spinning him, which I think is an interesting take on the character.
Absolutely.
They're definitely modernizing it a bit. But I love that it was J.K. Simmons. I was so excited. The way that he does Jameson is definitely how I remember him from the TV shows when we were kids, Nicholas. I am so excited. I have no words. I am just really excited.
There cannot be another J. Jonah Jameson actor. I think when J.K. Simmons retires, that just has to be the end of that character in any Spider-Man voiced media of all time. He is the best character in the entire franchise.
Now, I want to get to the last cutscene at the very end of the film. That actually kind of ties in with Captain Marvel. When you reveal that Nick Fury and his assistant or partner, I can't remember her name, were
Agent Hill.
Agent Hill,
yes.
There we go. But it reveals that they are actually Skrulls taking the place of Nick Fury and Agent Hill.
And those are the green shapeshifty aliens from Captain Marvel.
Because that, what I thought was hilarious, because they actually make a point of saying, as shapeshifters, they didn't catch that.
Yes, they ought to have known.
That they should have known that it was all an illusion. The first thing that I thought of when I saw that it was the Skrull, and I told this to Ryan, there's a scene earlier in the film where Peter Parker is saying, well, what about the other Avengers? What about Thor? And then he says, what about Captain Marvel? And Nick Fury says, don't you say her name.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting, because I'm like, I don't understand why Nick Fury would be so negative about it. But then to find out that it was the Skrull that she helped out, which is Ben Mendelsohn, which I think he did a really good job in Captain Marvel. So to find out that it was him is like, oh, okay, so now that line makes sense.
Because I've been trying to figure out what is the next phase after the whole Thanos gauntlet is. Actually,
I think they definitely threw the gauntlet down on this one.
Haha, nice pun.
Thanks.
Yeah, I am very happy that, because they teased, even in the trailers, that they were going to, like, oh, that Mysterio's from he's from an alternate Earth, and they get into, like, the whole Earth 616 and Earth this or that, and I was thinking, oh no, they're going to get into the multiverse, which is fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But then I like the way that they just sort of set up that expectation, and for the first half of the movie, when I saw it the first time, I was thinking, oh, I guess this is okay. This is like a very sort of mediocre, generic, like, oh, we're fighting these kind of non-personal elemental forces that don't really have a good explanation for why they're here and what they're doing. And then they spin that completely on its head as this kind of making fun of this kind of stupid, generic superhero plot that anyone will believe because that's what they're conditioned to expect.
Exactly.
I kind of like that meaning, though, that they did. And I know I keep bringing it back up to, it's like, people want to believe what they want to believe. But Ryan and I have read this book series. It's the Sword of Truth series.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very first book in the series, it's called The Wizard's First Rule.
Mm-hmm.
And the first rule is people will believe a lie even if the truth is brought to their attention, because they'd rather believe the lie than believe the truth. But I definitely think it's a good bad message to have, because I do believe in our society where we do have a lot of fear or hate, where people are wanting to believe whatever is being told to them because they don't really know what the truth is, or they don't really look into it. And
it's easy to, without even meaning to just sort of put yourself in a position where the only feedback you get is stuff that is tailored to match what you expect it to be and not necessarily what's true.
Right.
Again, to do another comparison, our aunt told me to watch this show where at the very, very beginning you see what happens between these two people. And then throughout the whole rest of the episode, there's actually people taking sides of who was right and who was wrong, even though we as the audience member knows what happened, but the people in the show is only by hearsay.
And what show is that?
It's called Bull.
Bull. Interesting.
I want to get back to why the importance of the scrolls are there. You find out that Nick Fury is on a big spaceship with a bunch of scrolls, and how they're going out and about and trying to, I guess, explore the universe and see what they can find, what's out there, which might be leading into two parts, which is, I think Galacticon is his name, which is another
like cosmic big bad villain type.
Yeah, like Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Mm-hmm.
That they might settle upon him, or what might happen is, which I really hope that's going to be kind of interesting and very epic, which is, and I only know this because I was watching some YouTube videos on what might be happening next, which is the comic series The Secret Wars, where all of a sudden all these superheroes are doing bad things and just attacking just for their own good, and then I'm not sure who thwarts it or finds out about it, but you find out that they're not actually Captain America, Iron Man, or Spider-Man, or all these different superheroes. It's actually Skrulls pretending to be them. They just got tired of it.
Was this that one, like, from a few years ago, there was that really controversial, like, Captain America does the Hail Hydra on a cover of comic? Do you know that, or was that something else?
I think this is a little bit earlier than that.
Okay.
But yeah.
I just remember, I don't read these comics, I just, sometimes something blips on the cultural radar.
Exactly. That's
Blips?
what
Blips.
Yeah.
Ooh. Synchronicity.
So that might be the one that they're bringing up, but you don't really know at that point, but it does set it up really well for either one of those two things.
Before we wrap up, did we want to talk about our favorite moments of
Okay.
film?
Yeah. I will go first. I thought this was really cool because, like Jessica and Ryan said initially, they actually had been to some of these places beforehand, if not all of these places. And
Not Berlin.
Not Berlin, that was one.
But for me, I was lucky enough to join them in a small part of it, and when they go to Holland, that was freaking hilarious to me because it was spot on with the nicety, the English, the flowers, the soccer jersey of the orange. We ended up going to a Netherlands soccer game when we were in Amsterdam, which was it was one of my highlights of that trip. And
Especially with the trumpet band behind us.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, that was my absolute favorite part of the movie, was just because I could point to the screen and it's like, I've been there.
For me, when they're going into the third act, Peter is on the plane with Happy and they're going to London to try and stop Mysterio. And there's this moment where Peter is working with this suit-making machine to create a new spider suit for himself. And then Happy looks at him, and Peter Parker is just working with this machine, and the look he has, I mean, and they definitely did this on purpose, but he uses these gestures and he's interfacing with the machine, and you can just see Tony Stark in him. And I think up until that point, I had kind of agreed with sort of the self-doubting Spider-Man a little bit, where like, no, he's not Iron Man. Man. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, he should give the power away to an adult. But I think in that moment when he's playing around, I kind of had this amazing moment. Oh my gosh, he actually could be the next Iron Man, or better than the next Iron Man. I think he has that potential. I think they set up that scene very intentionally and very well. So I think that was kind of, out of a very good movie, that was one moment where I kind of stopped and said, like, okay, yeah, this is probably going to be my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
For me, when they're in Berlin and Spider-Man meets up with Nick Fury, he finds out that Agent Hill is actually part of the Mysterio illusion, and he has to fight him, and then Mysterio gets shot, and Nick Fury comes, and you find out that Nick Fury actually shoots him, and then all of that, again, is an illusion, and then eventually he gets hit by a train. But with all of these illusions and all these people that he knows, and having MJ put in danger, so he has that moment, and then when he meets up with Happy, and it really is Happy.
Yeah.
But he's walking through the fields, and he's still injured because he did get hit by a train. And he goes to Happy, but at the same time, he's very hesitant about Happy.
Right.
Because he's unsure.
His trust has been violated.
Right.
Exactly. And the way that he acts that scene, and then eventually to go into the next scene where he finally admits that he's not Tony Stark and he misses him, and he feels like he's letting everybody down, including Tony Stark's memory. He has the survivor's guilt, and then it's finally now being talked about because he didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So to have those two back-to-back scenes of him being so emotionally raw, like those, I really liked.
Yeah, that was very touching.
Yeah.
Those are usually my favorite moments.
I know we've been talking for a very long time, but that just shows how great this movie was to us. And based off of, if you've actually listened this far, you can tell that we actually really, really enjoyed this movie as fanboys of the Marvel Universe, as fanboys of pop culture, me personally as...
or fangirls, you know.
Well, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes. Fan people.
Fan people.
In particular for me, it has a special place just because when Jessica and I were younger, we would try to get home as quickly as we can just so that we could watch Spider-Man just after the long day of school, just have that downtime and get lost in the world of Spider-Man and his ups and downs, his failures, and how he overcame things just to beat that foe for that day. For all those reasons, I say go see it.
Oh, absolutely. Go see it.
I definitely say go see it, but I've been waiting a week to tell Nicholas this. So it was not actually in the film. It was only in the trailers, this bit of information that I found out. But if you look at Peter Parker's passport, and say that 5 times fast, it says that his birth date is August 10th.
Oh, okay.
August 10th was the issue of the very first introduction of Spider-Man.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So it really is his birthday?
So it really is his birthday.
So I want to get also into, just because I know this was a long time ago. What, out of the previews and stuff, what were you guys excited that it's going to be coming out pretty soon? If you remember that part.
Gosh, that was such a long time ago. So I am a fan of Tarantino films in general, and there is this trailer for Tarantino's 9th film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, for those who don't know, it's a really interesting take with 2 actors in Hollywood during the time of Charles Manson and the Sharon Tate. Well, obviously in this one, Sharon Tate's played by Margot Robbie, and I know it's going to be a wild ride.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Kez?
Me?
Either of you, my cousin. My cousin's mine. Jessica, what upcoming film are you interested in seeing?
Well, this one also has Brad Pitt in it.
Ad Solara.
Ad Solara. Thank you.
It means to the stars.
Oh.
In Latin.
Well, thank you. So I would like to see Ad Solara. I think that's going to be a very interesting film. This was the first time I actually saw the trailer for it. Mm-hmm. But Nicholas said that it looked like a combination between Space Cowboys and Armageddon.
A little bit of Interstellar, I thought, too.
True. Mm-hmm. Well, I just said it because
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones
Yes.
plays Brad Pitt's father, who was in Space Cowboys.
I didn't
and
catch that. And
Donald
that was
Sutherland comes to Brad Pitt to have it, who was also in Space Cowboys.
And then Liv Tyler plays the wife of Brad Pitt, who was in Armageddon.
So is this actually a sequel?
I don't think
It's
so.
not. But that.
Surprise.
But yeah, that's it's Brad Pitt plays a astronaut whose father was also an astronaut. He's tasked with figuring out if his dad is going to destroy the Earth or not. And if he is destroying the Earth, then it seems like he's going to have to kill him.
Yep.
But that's what I think the movie's about. At least that's what the trailers make it seem like.
It definitely, like, the visuals and the tone look very promising, but I don't know. I think I'm going to wait and see what the reviews are when that gets closer to being released.
Right.
Yeah. Nicholas?
For me, I'm going the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
That looks super creepy, super twisted, and Joaquin Phoenix looks like he's going to put another great performance into it. And this doesn't even seem like it brings in Batman at all, which is going to be interesting. But yeah, it's...
Yeah, honestly, that looks so creepy. I'm not sure I even want to see it.
I'm still debating. I'm
definitely-
50-50 on this one.
Yeah, it could be... Yeah, I could see that being either amazingly good or just kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, we'll see. But I can definitely see it being very, very good, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. If you've stayed and listened this long to it, we greatly appreciate it. My name is Nicholas.
My name is Jessica.
And I've been Ryan.
And we are your friendly neighborhood Carpool Critics.
Bye.
Bye.